Coach has the privilege to call for a judge's ruling. Now, when a judge calls for a judge's ruling, they actually call it a judge's vote. You know, if Quizmaster makes an independent decision and the judge over here says, I don't think he's right, the judge can say, I'd like a judge's vote on that. If the Quizmaster makes it independent. That's not what we're talking about here. Judges can do that. We'll get to that later on in the test, actually. Okay, so here it is. Once again, let's do the real world scenario. Over here, Stacy has interrupted a question. She has finished a question in answer and given an answer in essence. Or she's interrupted and finished the question in essence, and she's finished an answer in essence. Okay? She did not get it word perfect. It was not a quotation. Make sure I say it. It is not a quotation, just a regular question, 20-pointer. As the Quizmaster, I have announced, I'm sorry, that's incorrect for -10. Now I'm going to reread the question for the red team, and Jody gets it correct. Well, the coach over here, Belinda, we'll make you the coach for a moment. Belinda believes that Stacy was right. She thinks, I think Stacy had it right. Even though it wasn't word perfect, I think she had it. So you now have the option of calling for a judge's ruling. What you are doing, Belinda, is you are calling for the judges, all three of them, to consider the decision of the incorrectness of Stacy's response. That's what you're asking for with a judge's ruling. Now, you can, even if the Quizmaster asks for a judge's vote, you can still call for a judge's ruling. Okay? You can call for a judge's ruling. Now, Stacy, she's got 30 seconds to make her request. She's got 30 seconds to... What I would suggest is that you find pages 7 through 9 in your rule book. And it says, for example, let's say... Well, no, it wasn't a quote. Let's not do that. Let's say number 4. Okay? Number 4. When a mispronunciation of any word is still clearly recognizable as the words required for either a non-quotation or quotation response. That's page 8 of the rule book. A response is still correct. Let's say the question comes up about King Nebuchadnezzar. And Stacy says Nebuchadnezzar. And that's why I count her wrong, because she has really botched that name. Okay? And as a Quizmaster, I'm going to count her wrong. Belinda's going to say, I'd like to request a judge's ruling. I think Stacy should have been voted correct because Rule 4 on page 8 says, when a mispronunciation of any word is still clearly recognizable as the words required for either a non-quotation or a quotation response. Even if they mispronounce a word in a quotation, it's okay. Well, now, the judges now are going to do two things. As a Quizmaster, I'm going to talk to my judges. Okay, judges, Belinda has made a request for a judge's ruling. Okay? If you agree with Belinda, I want you to get your coin and vote heads up. If you disagree with Belinda, I want you to vote tails up. No discussion. We're not going to discuss what she said. I'm merely going to just remind the judges this is what we're doing. Here is the procedure. We're voting on her request for a judge's ruling. If you agree with her, heads up. If you disagree with her, tails up. Now, we're going to look at it, reveal your coins. Okay. I voted one way as the Quizmaster. My judge over here voted the same way, but my judge over here voted a different way. Now we are briefly going to discuss, okay, why did you vote opposite of the two of us? Well, whatever reason might be. Okay? They'll briefly discuss it. Then they're going to vote again. If the first vote is unanimous, all three judges vote the same thing, you announce the decision, move forward. If the vote is split, they discuss it briefly, vote a second time, and then the second vote is binding. Even if it's split, it is a binding vote at that point. Okay? And again, you're all voting by coin. Everybody got it? That's a judge's ruling. You're voting by coin based on what you heard, and you're voting on whether or not you agree with the coach. Now, the coach over here, Belinda, she can also call for a judge's ruling if Keith is counted correct and she thinks he was incorrect. That's right there on that page. the decision of correct or incorrect based on this thing. She can call for that. That, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I use that rather sparingly, though. I'm not going to call for a lot of judges' rulings to get the other team wrong. I'm going to use them most often when I think my team is right. But at least I have that option. And there are times that I would exercise that option. Okay? Any question on judges' rulings?
I got one.
Please.
I'm presuming it's okay for the scorekeeper in that situation to say, I agree with your logic, I'm gonna change what, I originally said the answer was wrong. Now with my vote, I say, I agree with you, I'm changing it, I think your answer was right.
Okay. Now, we had this listed before. We have 3 judges. Quizmaster judge, timekeeper judge, judge. The scorekeeper, assuming that they are separate, is not a judge. Scorekeeper cannot do that. The scorekeeper can only do what the quizmaster announces, assuming that you have a 3rd judge in the room. Okay? If the scorekeeper is a judge, then they get a vote.
I said scorekeeper, didn't I?
You did.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Quizmaster.
Quizmaster. Okay.
Quizmaster says that is incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Nebuchadnezzar, that is incorrect.
And then they come back and say...
Then the coach says, I would like a judge's ruling, I think that's correct based on this rule.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I said scorekeeper, I meant quizmaster. And then the quizmaster says, you know what, I think you're right, even though I said the person was wrong initially, I'm now gonna vote and say, I think he was correct.
Okay.
That's okay, is that correct?
The quizmaster, if the quizmaster initially counted Stacy incorrect, and then listening to the information you present, I can, in my mind, change, oh, yeah, that is right. But she brought it to the judges, it's going to go to the judges. So, and if the 2 judges next to me both disagree, for whatever reason, even though I see the logic, you have to go with what the judges vote for. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Please.
And this here kind of goes along with judge's ruling. I did do this in the last match. The question was, it was a 10-point question. Well, one of my 20-point quizzers answered last year. And the question was, what is sin? Buzzed in, and he gave both 20-point answers. Okay. This is the 10-point answer. Of course, it was counted wrong, but I actually did a judge's ruling, and it was counted wrong, and said that it wasn't. But here's the 10-point question, and it says, what is sin?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, sin is refusing to do God's will as revealed by His Word and Spirit. If you look in the book, it gives both scriptures, 1 John 3:4 and James 4:17. He should have been correct. Is that it? Would that have, should he have been correct?
I am actually going to cover that exact scenario later in the test. If I can do it at a later time, let's do it at a later time. Sure. Because you have a valid point. It fits with the judge's ruling, but it'll fit better with where I'm going to go later on. Okay, so let's do it then, but I want you to bring up the same scenario. Okay? All right? All right, so that's no, that's fine. Now, just a couple points about judges' rulings. You are allowed 2 of them per match. Even if the match goes into overtime, you are not given an additional one. And also, letter C in that section. Coins are not flipped. Yes, that means we have seen people do that. Judges will sit over here and say, is that correct or incorrect? I vote no. No, you do not flip your coin. You make a conscious, you laugh, but it has happened. Trust me, in 30 years I've seen just about everything.
If you're going to bring home, you might as well go.
Yeah, if you're going to go out in style. As a teen quizzer, they actually called an official's timeout once. It was a hot room, and I'm kind of intense. Okay, I know, I admit it. I was so intense in the match, and I'm ready to go, and they called an official's timeout. Brian, would you like to go to the bathroom for me? I had a bloody nose. My nose was literally, I was just so hyper, so intense, and the room was kind of hot. I actually had a bloody nose and did not know it. And even if I knew it, I didn't care. I want that next question. I'm ready to go. Okay? I've seen everything. I think I have. One of these days I'll see something new, but Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, so that is a judge's ruling. Judges' rulings are merely an attempt to correct or give the coach an opportunity for the correctness or incorrectness of an answer. I'm going to fight for my team. I use my judges' rulings when I coach. I'm going to fight for my team. If I think they're right, if I even think they might be right, I'm going to fight for my team. Now, if I think the other team is wrong, I'm not going to, now if I'm certain they're wrong, I'll do it. But if I'm not absolutely certain the other team's wrong, I'm probably going to hold off on that. But my team, if I think they're right, if I think there's a chance I can convince the judges they're right, I'm going to fight for my team. I'm going to do everything I can. I want my kids to know I'm for them. And then I'm going to take them out of the room and explain to them what they did and why it became a question, saying, now you got to work on that. You got to learn it better.
Is there any strategy in trying to save a judge's ruling for overtime?
Is there any strategy? If it's a very tight match, it might be an important strategy to have it. But the problem is if you don't call for that judge's ruling on question 17, that might be the one to cost you the match. So very rarely will you use both judges' rulings in a match and then go to overtime and wish you had another one. Very rarely. It can happen, but not very often. Okay. But again, part of the deal here, we don't want it to become a legal match with attorneys wrangling over tenses of words. That's not, we're trying to have fun. But we do want to work within the rules, and the kids know the rules, basically. And they know, hey, that's not right. Why did they count it right? Or, hey, that's not wrong. Why did they my quizmaster count my teammate? We're going to give you an opportunity to fight for your kids. Okay? All right, let's move on. I wanted to do that because it's important. Let's turn to page 17 in the rule book. We talked about this earlier. This is kind of an important thing, and that's why it's in the test. If you will look right in the middle of the page, right underneath the heading Guidelines for Quiz Officials, it states most emphatically and very clearly, the following officials will be involved in a Junior Bible Quiz competition: a quizmaster/judge, a scorekeeper/judge, and a timekeeper/judge. We have 3 judges. Okay? If there are sufficient officials, a judge or judges will be added, and either the timekeeper and or the scorekeeper will not serve as a judge. There it is, black and white, clear as a bell. We have 3 judges. The quizmaster is a judge. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in team quiz, do they not have a quizmaster and then 3 separate judges?
No, 2 judges.
It is? Okay. Okay.
Quizmaster.
At one time, they used to have 3 separate judges. I do know they did at one time. I didn't know if they still did. Okay. So that is it right there. Again, this has been a question in certain parts of the country. It's not a question. It's right there. All right, moving on. Number 12 also is on page 17. And if you look right below where we just read in the note, the last half of that note, should a quizzer be overcome by emotion, the quizmaster may call an official timeout for the team in need. The coach may communicate only with that quizzer and may make any necessary substitution. Folks, let me give you a hint. We're dealing with kids. Every once in a while, a child will display emotion. This is normal. Okay? Some kids are a little more normal than others. There are some kids that display emotion on a regular basis. And it might be to everybody's advantage if you as a quizmaster say, hey, you know what, let's have an official timeout. Belinda's over here, she's in tears. I mean, she's going to cause a short in the quiz box. She's crying so hard over that buzzer. And we don't want anybody electrocuted. So as a quizmaster, you have the right to call for an official timeout. As a coach, if you see a child, you might even want to call a point of order. Hey, you know, we got a procedural error here, and you can call an official timeout. You know, child's overcome with emotion, i.e. crying. Now, coach, here's what you can do. You can come up to that quizzer, put your arm around him, try to console that singular quizzer. You cannot talk with the other kids on your team. If you have to, you can make a substitution, take that child out of the room, give them a minute to compose themselves, and when they come back in 3 questions later, you have to call a timeout to put the child back in. You cannot make substitutions without a timeout or a quiz out. But you can make a substitution and put that child who's calmed down now, they can go back in the match. But again, you would have to call a timeout to do it. If you're out of timeouts, you're out of luck. So All right, everybody got it?
I'm sure it has happened that a coach did say something to another quizzer, was it team foul?
That'd be a team foul. Yeah, I'm sure it has. I can't say I've seen it, but to me that's such a minor thing, you know. But I'm sure it's happened. All right, number 13. We're now going to move to page 19 in the rule book. So if you would, turn to page 19. Let's take a look at it. And we're looking up at the top of the page, number 15. If a response is not obviously correct or incorrect, the word I would use here is incomplete, he, which in this case refers back to the quizmaster, should permit the quizzer the full 30 seconds to attempt to complete the response. Child buzzes in. Where did Jesus pray the night before his crucifixion? The garden. The garden. It was the garden. They prayed in the garden. And the kids, and then they stop and they think for 10 seconds. It's not wrong. Have they said anything wrong? No. But you have to have that word Gethsemane. If a child sits there for 27 seconds and says the garden, the garden, the garden, the garden of, and at the 28th second finally say Gethsemane, it is correct. And it is up to you as a quizmaster to give them the full time. If they're not obviously correct or incorrect, give them the whole 30 seconds. Okay? You do not get to call them incorrect at second 27 if they've given an incomplete response. Okay? All right, last one on this page. Please turn to page 21 of the rule book. We mentioned this briefly earlier. Now we're going to expand and give illustration. Down at the bottom of the page, number 3, where it says judges vote. If a judge disagrees with the quizmaster's independent decision, he may request the vote of the judges by coin without conferring. Now, please hear what has just happened here. Quizmaster, following the rule on page, I think it's on page 19. Let me look at it. Yeah. Quizmaster on page 19, number 16. Quizmaster is encouraged to make an independent decision on each response. Okay? And the quizmaster has done that. Yay, quizmaster. But one of the judges thinks they're wrong. That shouldn't have been ruled incorrect. The kid was right. The judge can call for a judge's vote. It's not a judge's ruling because it's the judge that's doing it, not the coach. And now the 3 judges are going to vote on the correctness or incorrectness of an answer. Now obviously this judge thinks the quizmaster is wrong. The quizmaster, of course, announcing the decision by themselves, they think they're right. So the deciding vote is this third person over here, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why we need judges who pay attention. This is your job. This is your singular one job. Please pay attention to the match, judge. This is where we need you to pay, because you never know when this is going to come up. Pay attention. Just follow what's going on. So now we have a vote. Now, if it's a split vote, just like a judge's ruling, the judges can confer briefly among themselves. If it's a unanimous vote, the quizmaster realizes, oh, I said correct. I meant to say incorrect. I don't know what I was thinking. Now, coaches, listen carefully to this one. The quizmaster makes an independent decision. You think they're wrong. You want to call for a judge's ruling. But as you're about to say, judge's ruling, I'd like to make a judge, one of the judges says, I want a judge's vote, let the judge do it. Don't waste your judge's ruling here. Save, you only get 2 of them. The judges can call for a judge's vote as many times as they want to. So save your judge's rulings if the judges are going to try that. Okay? So now, here's the story that goes with it. Again, most of you have probably heard it because I tell it about every time, but it's the best illustration I can make. My first year in JBQ, I went to a church in Minnesota called Frigley Assembly of God. And we were one of the JBQ powerhouses in the state of Minnesota. Our rivals were from Bloomington, Minnesota. We were on the north side of Minneapolis, they're on the south side, and we're big-time rivals. We're going at it all the time. We'd win one, they'd win the next one, we'd win one. Back and forth, big-time rivalry for years. I'm a judge. Now, it's my first year. I've never done this before. I'm still learning. I have not written the test yet. I have not gotten to that point in my JBQ repertoire. And the question comes up. Question number 13, whatever it was, for 30 points. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, The kid from Bloomington buzzes in, interrupts the question, and proceeds to give the response. But the answer, they go out of order. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 12 lists what 9 gifts of the Spirit. And the child starts going out of order and starts repeating themselves. Perfectly legal. It's not a quote. They're not, and they haven't, and by the way, I should mention, they give no incorrect information. Word of wisdom, tongues, interpretation of tongues, word of knowledge, prophecy, tongues, healing, working of miracles, word of knowledge, and they begin repeating themselves, and they give 8 of the 9 answers. But to this day, to my dying day, I will swear on my grave, that child never said faith, which in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 is one of the 9 gifts of the Spirit. The child never, but because they repeated themselves, and because they went out of order, everybody else was confused. I say, I'm never confused. At least at that moment I was not. Because I know that child, because I know this question. I know this stuff. I mean, when I was a Bible quizzer, I did 1 and 2 Corinthians. I knew 1 Corinthians 12. I think I quoted it if I remember correctly. And the child never said faith. The quizmaster, who is thoroughly confused, says, that's correct for 30 points. I'm choking on myself. I make eye contact with my coach. Her name was Kathy. And I look at Kathy. And I start giving her the eye. Call an appeal. Back then they weren't called judges' rulings. We called them appeals. You should call an appeal. And she looks at me like, what? She had no idea what I was thinking or what I was, call an appeal. Question number 4. Sure enough, Bloomington won the match by like 15 or 20 points. It all came down to that one question that the quizmaster messed up. It was all the quizmaster's fault. And the girl on our team, Michelle, I knew that not only would she have gotten the answer right, she would have gone in order. And we could have easily, and she would have only had to do it one time. Michelle was good. Okay, you'll see her name on the scorekeeping part later. Michelle was good. I know she would have gotten it right. And I go up to Kathy at the end, and that's Kathy, that 30-pointer. You should have called it. The kid never said faith. Kathy pulled out the rule book and said, well, Brian, you should have called for a judge's vote. So yes, for 30 years now, I've lived with the guilt that Bloomington won that match because of me. It was my fault. Dan Rector, if you're watching, yes, it was your team. So anyways, but that is the rule. The judges can call for judges' votes. If you think the quizmaster's independent decision is incorrect, feel free to ask for a judge's vote. And quizmasters have to go, even if the 2 judges overrule you, you have to go with what they do, because they're 2 of the 3 judges. You have to go with what they say, even if you think they're wrong.
All right. I do have one quick question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so if you have a judge that says, I would like to have a judge's vote on that, you still follow the same procedure that you don't confer, you vote.
Yep. If it's a split vote, then you can.
Here's where my question is.
Okay.
If a judge is calling for a judge's ruling, do you not automatically already have a split vote?
Automatically.
So why not go ahead and go to the confirm?
Why not go to, because as a quizmaster, I might say, oh, wait a minute, I messed up.
Okay.
I should have counted that correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just following the quick procedure.
Okay.
But yeah, we automatically know the quizmaster thinks one thing, the one judge over here thinks another, so we know we have a split vote. But the quizmaster could change their mind and say, oh, what was I thinking? Brain lapse. All right, let's go to the next page. Again, this one goes pretty quickly. I spend a lot of time on that page because there's a lot of important rules that we went over. Not that they're not all important, but here's a couple things here. Okay, true or false? Please note, if a statement is false, tell me why and correct the statement to make it a true statement. First one, a quizzer should signal the coach to call for a judge's ruling. True or false? That is very false. A quizzer should not signal a coach at any time for any reason during the course of the match. Any verbal or nonverbal communication, this is a quote from the rule book, is an automatic team foul. Now, let's say Keith turns around after being counted incorrect and turns around and looks at me and starts trying to tell me you should call for a judge's ruling. Okay, as a quizmaster, Keith, I'm sorry, that's a foul. However, the coach can then still call for the judge's ruling. They can still call for it. Now, if Keith does that on a 10-point question, I'll throttle him later. I'll get him at the end of the match. Don't waste my judge's rulings on a 10-point question and get a foul on it on top of it. Besides, I probably would have gotten it anyways. Okay?
What rule is that?
What do you look? Quizzer should signal the coach to call for a judge's ruling. Is that what you?
No, the rule that you cited.
What I don't even remember what do you? I'm trying to.
Any nonverbal communication.
Oh, okay. Any communication, verbal or nonverbal. Let me find it for you real quick.
Should be under fouls.
Yeah, it's actually. It was early in the.
Okay, well, let me give you my thought process, and maybe we'll waste our time.
Go ahead.
You, as a judge, sitting there looking at the coach going, is that not a team foul of some sort? You know what I'm talking about? What we were just talking about a minute ago.
Yeah, if the kid is making any verbal or nonverbal communication.
No. What I was saying is you, as a judge.
Oh, as a judge.
With
my
previous
example,
example, would that have not been some sort of a foul?
It should have been.
Okay.
It should have been a foul. But again, I'm just thinking that's wrong. I didn't, but should it have been a foul on me as a judge? Yes, it should have.
Okay.
And because I was with one of the teams here. All right, did you find it, Jasper?
It just says that a quizzer, coach, or substitute improperly confers. I don't see that verbal communication, but we can.
There is something in here about verbal or nonverbal communication.
F, is that it? 6, F, let's see.
Page 6.
An obvious attempt to communicate by verbal or, it's page 10, by verbal or nonverbal means.
It's page 10 in your version.
Oh, sorry. And
Yeah, okay, yeah, here we go. I underlined it. Okay, and it's page 10, timeouts and substitutions, letter F. An obvious attempt to communicate by verbal or nonverbal means at any time is considered improper conferring, and improperly conferring is a foul.
Okay. Even if it's done by the judge.
Even if it's done by a judge.
Because I guess you've got to
Now,
know who
if
he
the
was trying to
judge
communicate with.
is not with either, well, of course, if they're not with either team, why would they be communicating
Exactly,
with other teams?
yeah.
So, anyways, so a quizzer should not signal the coach to call for a judge's ruling. Okay, that's how you make that statement true. Next one: an official should always be prepared to judge. True or false?
False.
True. Remember, we have a quizmaster judge, a scorekeeper judge, and a timekeeper judge.
What if you have 5 people?
Now, but the question here is an official should always be prepared to judge.
Okay.
When I walk in at the beginning of the day, I don't know if we're going to have enough officials in my room. I have to plan. Here's why. Let me tell you exactly why this question's on the test. At regionals every year, I get people that want to be officials because they want to make sure their team has enough officials, and all they want to do is be a timekeeper. I'm sorry, you're not helping me here. You are going to be a judge. I need judges. Timekeepers are a luxury. If I can have people just timekeep, that's great. I'll do it if I can.
Okay, so what my question was is if you've got 5 people.
If I got 5 people,
you've got a timekeeper and
scorekeeper separate.
They're not officials.
They're officials, but they're not judges.
But they wouldn't vote as a.
Because they're not judges.
Okay, then the answer would be false.
Okay, but an official should always be prepared to judge. You should be prepared.
You
into
mean
that
as
room.
a judge for the meet?
Yes.
I was talking about a judge for a particular judge's ruling.
When you
request or something like that.
you walk into a room, you should be ready. If you're going to be an official, you should be ready to be. One of the tasks you will have is to be a judge. You should be ready.
I think I was confused by the question. I thought, what if you have question 15 and a judge's ruling is requested?
Right.
The scorekeeper and the timekeeper.
Scorekeeper, and if
they're
it's
not going to have
they're
to
not going to
judge.
judge in that case. But you should be prepared at the beginning
To
of
be
the
a
day.
judge for the
You
match.
might be, you might only be a scorekeeper, but you might be a scorekeeper judge, and you have to be ready for that. Okay. Next question: it is a foul if a quizzer activates the buzzer before the calling of question. That is false. Okay. That is false. If you look at letter I on page 7, if a quizzer activates the equipment between the calling of question and the reading of the first word, the quizzer should be charged a foul. But if they hit their buzzer before the calling of the word question, it is not a foul. For example, Red 2. Red 2. Keith gives a correct response. That is correct for 10 points. Well, we haven't called the question. Oh, okay. Clear the buzzer, move on. That's all it is. Okay. Question, next one is, a quizmaster should try to make an independent decision on every response. We've already discussed that one. That is true. Quizmaster should try to make... Okay, page 19. Hold on a second. I got a problem in my book here. Okay. All right, next one. It is automatically wrong if a quizzer answers a question with an answer to another question. True or false? That is false. Now, Jody, here's your scenario. You had a child who answered the question. It was a 10-point question. What is sin? And they gave the answers to both of the 20-point questions. Okay, so if you would you please, can you find those quick enough to read them to us? Here is, while she's looking at it, I want 3 of you are going to be my judges. Belinda, Stacy, and Keith. Here's the question. Question for 10 points. What is sin? The 10-point answer, as written in the book, is sin is refusing to do God's will as revealed by His Word and His Spirit. That is the official correct answer. Now,
I can tell you what they are.
Oh, so can I. Go ahead.
Wanting to do good and not doing it is sin.
Okay. James
And then-
4:17.
okay, and then the other one is disobedience. Sin is disobedience to God's command.
Okay. Now, what she's giving is the answer to 2 different 20-point questions. James 4:17 contains what definition of sin? 1 John 3:4 contains what definition of sin? Okay. Now, the child buzzes in on the 10-point question. What is sin? And they give both of those responses. Sin is transgression or disobedience to God's command, and sin is knowing to do good but not doing it is sin. Vote. Now, obviously here, the question on the page here, it is automatically wrong if a quizzer answers a question with an answer to another question. That is patently, completely, and absolutely false. It is not automatically wrong if a child gives an answer to another question. But it may be incomplete. You may give the answer to another question. I have my own example I'm going to come to in a moment. It may be incomplete, but it's not necessarily incorrect. You have to give them the full 30 seconds. Now, in this situation, what do you think? Keith, Stacy, Belinda, take a moment. The correct answer is sin is refusing to do God's will as revealed by His Word and His Spirit. That's the answer to the 10-point question. The quizzer said sin is disobedience or transgression to God's Word, and then James 4, knowing to do good and not doing it is sin. Should her quizzer have been counted correct or incorrect? Take a moment and think. And now I'm going to put you on the spot. Belinda, we're going to start with you. And by the way, Keith and Stacy, you can't change your mind based on what you hear her say. Don't give a rationale, just correct or incorrect. Would you have counted the child correct? You're going to say correct. Stacy, correct? Keith?
Correct.
Okay. What would I have done? I probably would have voted the child correct. But this is going to illustrate another point for you. I teach my quizzers on a regular basis. The closer you are to word